He's on a business trip. He's on a business trip. All business trip. Okay, don't forget to turn. You guys don't forget to turn your lights on.
Gonna start.
Don't forget to turn your lights
Last until April.
Yeah.
Or May.
Oh, yeah, great. Thank you.
The most recent years.
Okay, I would like to call the January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Cicero Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Ms. Robeson, please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel.
Here.
Ms. Luckett. Here. Mr. Bick.
Here.
Mr. Mays.
Here.
Mr. Stanton.
Here. Please take note of the fire exits located in the front and the rear of this room. At this time, please silence all cell phones and pagers. Please note that tonight's meeting is being simulcast on YouTube and is also being recorded. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I would like to open our organizational meeting, which will be brief. We're piggybacking this meeting onto our normal meeting since a separate meeting is not warranted. And we do always want to be mindful of conserving town resources. So to start with, opening the organizational meeting. The first issue is appointment of Zoning Board of Appeals clerk for 2023. I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Ms. Marie Robeson to the position of Zoning Board of Appeals clerk. Ms. Robeson has been working with us for the past year and has done a great job at recording and publishing our minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Mays. You know what? I'll call the roll on this one just to keep everything above board, I guess. So, Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays.
Yes to the motion.
And Mr. Stanton, yes to the motion. Motion carried. Congratulations. For the record, I did ask her if she wanted to continue before I did that. Second issue is appointment of Zoning Board of Appeals attorney for 2023. I would like to make a motion that we reappoint Terry J. Kerwin Jr. of Kerwin Law Firm, PC, to the position of Zoning Board of Appeals attorney for 2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Luckett. Ms. Robeson, please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett. Yes to the motion. Mr. Bick.
Did you ask him first, since he's not here?
Yes, he's good.
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays.
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Establishment of the 2023 schedule for the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the meeting dates as presented in tonight's agenda. Last page. Meeting dates are to be the first Monday of the month with the following exceptions that were made to avoid conflicts. So the first is January 9th, 2023, which is this meeting. The second is July 10th, 2023. The third is September 11th, 2023. And the final exception is November 13th, 2023. All meetings will commence at 6 p.m. Meetings may be canceled if there are no agenda items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Beck. Mr. Robeson, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel.
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett. Yes to the motion. Mr. Bick.
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays.
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Continuing education requirements for 2022 and 2023. Please remember that as board members, we are required to have 4 continuing education hours per year. Please make sure you document your hours for 2022 and provide them to both myself and our town clerk by the end of January. Please note that I do have discretion to determine what constitutes training, so please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. Just as a side note, any of our internal training huddles count towards this goal. For 2023, please be on the lookout for notices regarding any training offered through the town. If the board has a month with no applications, we may elect to hold a live training session. And then second to last, it's with sadness that I report that one of our longstanding members, 27 years, Gary Natali, presented his resignation in December of last year. So Gary's been a great influence on this board, as well as a mentor to all of us, and he'll be sadly missed, but he's going on to other fun things. So thank you, Gary. And then lastly, recognizing our new board member, please everyone welcome Jeremy Mays to the board. Mr. Mays served previously as an ad hoc to this board and was appointed last week by the town board. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome. The organizational meeting is now closed. So moving on to our regular meeting. Has everyone read the minutes of our December 5th, 2022 meeting? Any corrections other than what's already been provided? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the December 5th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Great by Ms. Luckett. Do I have a second?
I will second the minutes.
Mr. Mays and Ms. Robeson, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays.
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. The Cicero Town Board acknowledges the importance of full public participation at all public meetings, and therefore we urge all who wish to address those in attendance to please come to the microphone located in the front of the room. At this time, I will make a motion that all actions taken tonight are type 2 actions and have a negative impact that is no impact on the environment unless otherwise indicated. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Bick. Ms. Robeson, please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. I will briefly review the process for tonight's meeting for the benefit of those present that have never before been before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Each applicant will have an opportunity to describe their project. The board will then ask questions about that project. I will then open a public hearing where people will be able to speak for or against the proposed variance. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to public input and provide additional information. Board members will be allowed to ask follow-on questions. The board will then openly discuss amongst ourselves the 5 factors that contribute to the final decision. Please note this board does not have a pre-agenda meeting, so there's no prior discussion of cases outside of this meeting. And finally, a motion will be made either approving or denying the requested variance, seconded and voted upon. So our first case tonight is an application for a property on Bartell Road. It's tax map 109-01-88.3, barring no real address. And I apologize in advance because I may slaughter your last name, but the owner is Brian Pichot. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind coming up and addressing the board.
Hi, how are you guys? My name is Joe Perteski. I'm actually the attorney for Mr. Pichot. Mr. Pichot is looking to build an extension onto an existing pole barn that will be 12.6 feet away from the side yard where a 30 feet side yard setback is required. I'll discuss the factors, go through my conclusions on the factors. Then if you have any questions for me, you can feel free. If I can't answer them, the owner is also here, so he may be able to answer on anything that I'm not able to answer on. So as far as the first factor goes, will the proposed variance result in the detriment to nearby properties? I'd say no for 3 reasons. This is an extension onto an existing westerly wall that's already up. So it's going to be this extension is going to be totally in conformance with the existing structure, and it will also be parallel with the existing westerly wall. Additionally, it's going to be set back at least 500 feet from Bartell Road. So aesthetically, from the road, it's set back quite a ways. And interestingly, which is something I've never seen before, the neighbor who's most impacted is actually the brother of the applicant, who was also the engineer who submitted all the plans you have. So he obviously has no issues. He submitted the plans and knows the project in and out. The neighbor to the easterly side is actually the father of my client too, and he also has no issues with the proposed project. Is there a feasible alternative? Due to the width of the lot, it's 200 feet, and the size of this expansion that he's looking to have, there's going to be a variance that's required wherever he puts this. We think this location is the most ideal because once again, it conforms with the existing westerly building wall of the existing structure. So it conforms with what's already there. And also it maximizes the amount of space that he's looking to have. The third factor is the requested variance substantial. Arguably, yes, it is substantial, but this board should also take into consideration that there is an existing structure there and that this is just an extension of an existing structure. So any substantiality that's there is mitigated by that fact. Are there any adverse physical or environmental conditions? None that we are aware of. You will see on that map that there is a designated Army Corps of Engineers wetland that's there. This project is outside of that. I spoke with your town engineer, Mr. Parrish, and he confirmed with me that there is no buffer requirements when it comes to Army Corps of Engineer wetlands, so we should have no issues there. And then finally, is it self-created? Yes, admittedly, it is self-created. He's looking for additional storage space, but given the other factors, I think a variance is warranted here.
Thank you. So at this time, I will open the floor for questions and comments from the board.
I think I discussed this with Steve already. It's a non-conforming parcel based on our current zoning, simply because at one time it was one parcel. Steve, do you have any idea when this was split off? Yeah, we've been there. 2009, okay. I missed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it looks like the approval was in 2011.
Okay, oh, 2011, okay. But it was subsequent to the structure. Sure, of course. Now, I noticed a slew of, I don't know what to call them, auto carcasses around the property when I looked at the satellite imagery. Is there a business operating out of there? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just a question.
To my knowledge, there is no business that is operating out of there. This is just for personal storage. And I do believe my client is looking to eventually build a home on this
Okay.
at some point in the future.
Is not the size of the building also an area variance? There is no limit to the size of the structure?
So when the building was constructed, there was not a limit. Today, there would be a limit based on the lot area and the fact if it were accessory to a residence. This is not. It's existing non-conforming structure. There's no principal residential use there. It's a non-residential structure, and our code doesn't address the area of the building that way.
But it's an expansion of a non-conforming use.
Yeah, well, Steve, if you don't mind, I've looked at your code. So your code actually states that a legal non-conforming use will become an illegal non-conforming use if the intensity of the use changes. The intensity of the use isn't changing. He's continuing to use it for the same exact purposes he's been using it.
But
So-
instead of storing 20 cars, he's storing 55. That seems like an increase in the intensity of the use.
I think your codes office has already made an interpretation on it, as far as whether it's a legal non-conforming use or not. I think your code, I think the interpretation has already been made that it's, we're not creating an illegal non-conforming use at this point by doing what we're doing.
So just to delve into what's kind of being circled around here. We've had a number of instances in the past where our attorney, who unfortunately is not here right now, has said that the real issue here and what we're allowed to address is the actual aggrieved portion of the applicant's application. So right now, the only aggrieved piece is what the town has determined as the expansion of the nonconformity, which is the side yard. So the town has decided that the use is okay. They haven't put that in front of us. So in most terms, we're not allowed to address that. If they had come back and said that, well, you can't use it this way, you can't use the property this way with that structure, then that would be on the form and we'd be looking at that tonight.
Interesting.
Steve, did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So the town is aware the building is there. The only reason I ask is it hasn't been assessed. That's not our issue, I realize, but I just want to clarify the town does know the building is there.
And again, I don't, that building was part of the larger parcel. And
Okay.
I would have to check with the assessor at the time it was
I
constructed.
already looked at the records.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just curious.
So is there already a variance for the 13.3 off of the line, the side setback?
No.
No.
Oh, no.
So you said to the best of your knowledge, it wouldn't be used for a business, but we have the applicant here. Can you state that this is personal use, not business? Okay. Do we have any other questions at this point? Okay. So at this time, I will open the public hearing. Would anyone speak for this? Would anyone speak against this? This time I will close the public hearing. Does the board have any other further questions? Anything they want to cover? Okay. So with that, I think I'll take on the 5 factors for this one. So before we make a motion, I'd like to review the 5 factors that we need to consider before granting an area variance. The first is whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. My answer to that is no. My reason is that the proposed expansion of the non-conforming side yard setback is generally in line with the existing structure. I believe another mitigating factor is the distance from Bartell Road and the general shielding that's provided by the foliage that's in front of the building. If you wouldn't mind.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Ms. Luckett,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agreed.
Second is whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. My answer to that is no. I came across that because the existing structure possibly could be expanded to the east and it would be on the edge of requiring a variance or not. But that existing structure would have to be reconfigured so significantly in order to do so to the point where it may necessitate an entirely new structure, which seems like it'd be a burden.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Ms. Luckett,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agreed.
Whether the requested area variance is substantial. My answer to that is yes. The applicant is requesting a 17.4 foot variance, which is 58% of the required 30-foot side yard. This results in a side yard of no less than 12.6 feet.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Ms. Luckett,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agreed.
Fourth is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. My answer to that is no. The reasoning is that the proposed construction will be removed from the site of the public on Bartell Road. Additional storage may also neaten up the clutter of objects outside of the existing structure. And finally, any issues related to the proximity to wetlands will have to be settled by the owner prior to the town issuing a building permit. And we have some information that that's already been taken care of.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Ms. Luckett,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agreed.
Fifth is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. As the applicant said, that is a yes. The applicant is choosing to enlarge the nonconformity of an existing nonconforming structure. It's not necessarily a reason to deny it a variance.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Ms. Luckett,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agreed.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion on behalf of Brian Pichot to expand a non-conforming structure or a proposed addition to the existing non-residential storage building will increase the non-conforming side setback of 13.3 feet to 12.6 feet where a minimum distance of 30 feet is required as depicted on the annotated survey plan, Pachot subdivision, altered on September 25th, 2021 by Thomas Pachot, P.E.
Second,
If you please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
yes to the motion?
Mr. Mays,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Congratulations. All right, our second case tonight is an application for 6601 Lakeshore Road. The owner is Sandra Martin. And apparently there's somebody doing the application, so if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Rich Krenzer, architect for the applicant.
If you wouldn't mind describing your project.
Sure. Sandra Martin and her husband Lauren Pratt have owned the property for about 25 years. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, but we'll forge through. The house, it's an older house, very close to the lake. They have a second floor. The entire second floor is master bedroom. They want to stay in the house. They want to age into the house. They would like to add a master bedroom addition. The current floor plan of the house, without significant renovation, really does not easily accommodate a modern master bedroom for, with a large bathroom for older people, that sort of thing. There's one small bedroom on the first floor currently. They have a lake lawn between, I'll call it a lake lawn, between the existing garage and the existing house. All the public rooms, the living room, the kitchen, those sorts of rooms look out towards that lake lawn and the view. The real only logical spot for an addition is where we're showing it to the, I'll call it to the south of the existing house. It's behind trees, it's behind a large stockade fence that all exists at the road edge. Like I've said to Steve on the phone, gosh, you barely know the house is there. These are pine trees, heck, year round, you don't know the house is there. So that is the location that we've determined to be best for the addition. It's farthest away from the lake, therefore mitigating any environmental factors.
Can I see? I see on your sheet 1 of 3 that
Mhm.
it doesn't just depict the proposed addition, it also has a red line that outlines what the 30-foot.
The required building envelope,
Rear,
where
yeah.
30 feet is required, we are proposing 15.1 feet off the road line.
Yeah, it looks like a very difficult lot to build.
It's a pinch point where the lake and Lakeshore Road converge. So there are some challenges.
So at this time, I'll open the floor for questions and comments from the board.
Am I correct in assuming that the reason you want the first floor is to eliminate the use of stairs?
Exactly, yeah. Or reduce the use of stairs.
Sure, right.
Mhm.
I also will make the comment that in going by here, you're right, you almost don't see the house. In the proximity to the road is definitely a concern just because we know how people drive.
Mhm.
And I have seen in several instances, not necessarily here, but where, cars go off the road and hit houses. So that is definitely was a concern of mine. But in going by there and looking at the lot, I will say that the trees being there and the fence and everything that did.
Trees, fence, there's bollards there
Mhm.
along the road.
Steve, is there anything on the books right now that would change the edge of pavement there? Any plans for the road or anything like that?
No.
Okay. The only thing I'll note, and this isn't really something that the code considers, but from the road line to the edge of pavement is almost another, it looks like another 15 and a half feet, which
Oh, it is. It's
gets you
significant.
pretty,
Yeah.
gets you pretty far away.
Yeah, I have to agree with Jeremy. I drove by the property and a little hidden gem, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
The wind has got to be substantial on that location, but
Any other questions, comments at this point? Okay. So at this time, I will open the public hearing. Would anyone speak for this? Would anyone speak against this? At this time, I will close the public hearing. Any other further questions? All right, would someone like to review the 5 factors? Make a motion? Oh, you know what? Before I get that, the owner here did provide us, should have said this during the. Yes, I should have said this during the public hearing. I'm not used to anyone coming here, so I usually we gloss over this. So this is a letter to the Town of Cicero ZBA. RE the Sandra Martin variance application, and it states, we, the undersigned, are aware that Sandra Martin is proposing to construct a addition for a master bedroom, bath, and laundry room to her property at 6601 Lake Shore Road. We're aware that an area variance is required. We've reviewed the drawing and have no objection to the application. So this is what I believe are contiguous neighbors, Hadley. And, oh, absolutely. Would you mind coming up to the microphone so we could capture that? I'm sorry.
The contiguous neighbors are both live out of town,
Okay,
neither one of which is a resident. So my neighbor on one side lives in Sedona, Arizona, and the neighbor on the other side lives in Auburn.
okay,
So those neighbors are actually the only ones that would actually be impacted, and they're 2 doors down. So I asked
Okay.
them to do that proactively.
great.
And attached to it, you don't need to read that right now, is a text from the one in Arizona saying, good luck, have.
Very
with it."
good.
So in other words, there's no objection, but she didn't have the form and she's sick. So
Okay,
I just want to clarify that.
thank you for that clarification. So I'll include this in the file. If anyone wants to see this, it's available. But with that, I'll re-request if someone wants to review the 5 factors, make a motion.
I can do it if that's okay. Everybody? Whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. I said no. The addition wouldn't be seen from the street. It'll be obscured by a 6-foot-high privacy fence and thick vegetation.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agree.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
Number 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. I said no. The applicant seeks to modify her home so that she can age in place. This requires an expansion of the footprint of the house so that a bedroom, bathroom, and laundry are located on the ground floor. And the only way she can do that is with an area variance.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agree.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial, I said, yes, as far as the setback, 15.1 is requested when at least 30 is required. That's substantial. It's around 50%. I didn't do the math.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agree.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I said no, the addition will be constructed in compliance with Town of Cicero building codes.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agree.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. I said yes, the applicant's choosing to add an addition that's non-conforming.
Mr. Daniel,
Agreed.
Mr. Beck,
Agreed.
Mr. Mays,
Agree.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
A motion. I make a motion to approve an area variance on behalf of Sandra Martin at 6601 Lakeshore Road, where the applicant is requesting approval to construct an addition having a front yard setback of 15.1 feet, where a minimum distance of 30 feet is required, and the proposed total lot coverage is 26.5%, where a maximum of 25% is allowed.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays.
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Motion carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 6th, 2023. I do have a little bit of a logistical issue for that, for the next one. So if everybody could stick around afterwards, just so I could explain what that is, I'd appreciate it. There being no other business before this board, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mays, second.
Second.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Still want to talk to you about that. Okay, so. He could build that addition.
It's-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Still on there.